Hi, another film I watched last weekend was Dave Made a Maze, written and co-written and directed by Bill Watterson, not that one. It's the story of Dave, an artist of unfocused creativity, who's constantly starting projects and never seeing them through, much to the frustration of his devoted girlfriend Annie. She gets home from a weekend away on a Sunday afternoon and discovers that Dave has built a cardboard fort in the middle of their living room. He's inside but refuses to come out and claims that he is in fact lost. She is unconvinced, but when she shakes it and tries to lift it up, hears the sound of heavy machinery inside, and Dave panics. She invites over a bunch of friends, and together they try and figure out why exactly Dave won't come out. Eventually, they decide to venture inside and go and simply get him. And they discover that the maze is, in fact, much, much bigger on the inside than the outside, that Dave's creativity has got completely out of hand, and that inside this complex and gigantic labyrinth, there is a minotaur made of cardboard waiting to get them. It's a really fascinating film. It's a throwback to fantasy adventures. There's a lot of humor, there's a lot of lightheartedness throughout. But it's a story about someone who has this creative urge and cannot focus it on anything, and is so determined to try and create something that they let their impulses run away from their own common sense, their own rationality, and as a result, completely engulfing their world and endangering their friends. And it's ultimately the responsibility that Dave has of saving his friends. That is what gives him real purpose and what makes him feel like he's actually achieved something worthwhile in rescuing his friends from the danger in which they're in. There's a lot of humor all the way through. There's a lot of deliberately superfluous characters. There's a couple of Flemish tourists who are dragged in on the adventure and who contribute almost nothing apart from a couple of gags. There's a homeless man who is brought in to help because he knows about cardboard and doesn't go into the maze, but instead helps himself to Dave and Annie's fridge. Um, and when the characters are killed within the maze, rather than there being blood and guts, they explode in craft supplies. So there's streamers of paper shavings instead of blood, or string instead of intestines. The production design of the inside of the maze is amazing. It all looks incredibly handmade from found materials, and every every chamber they're in is completely separate, completely unique. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some creative reuse of sets, but it never notices. It's brilliantly done and absolutely seamless. Um, the performances are strong. There's a lesser known cast that I'm familiar with. I did recognize a few. Anna Busch and James Urbaniak most prominently. Urbaniak has an almost analog to Dave role as a documentarian who's dragged in a cameraman and sound recordist to document the phenomenon of the maze. But it's his own devotion to his documentary that I think acts as a contrast with Dave's creative mania, that our character is so focused on the documentary that he winds up being a danger to others. The moral of the story, I think, is that pursuing creative goals is very important, but it mustn't damage or threaten your relationship with others. That you have to keep in perspective these multiple responsibilities in your life. And that although it's great to create something and have achieved something, that doesn't have to be something like a creative work, like a model or music or anything like that. It can just be creating the relationships in your life that are just as important as anything else, and in fact, crucial to life itself. And Dave slowly discovers that as he goes through the course of the movie. I really enjoyed Dave Made a Maze. I thought it was a brilliantly original, brilliantly unique work. It's also a breeze at barely an hour and 20 minutes. I really enjoyed it, and I'd recommend it very highly.